Hello, 6th grade. So now that we've done iReady lessons for multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting decimals, we're going to do a mixed review of all of those operations today. So looking at your worksheet, the first problem is a multiplication of decimals problem. And I'm going to remember from the iReady lesson that when I multiply decimals, I do not line up the decimal. So when I set up this problem, I'm going to have my first number on top. So 12 and 3/10, and my second number 1600ths on the bottom with the numbers lined up, but my decimal will not be lined up. All right, and then I am going to multiply normally. So I'm going to start with my 6, and I'm going to multiply that 6 with the 3 up top. So I'm going to do 6 times 3, which is 18. Write the 8, carry the 1. And then 6 times 2, which is 12, but add my 1 up top, so I get 13. And then 6 times 1, oops, I forgot to carry my 1. 6 times 1, which is 6, plus 1, which is 7. All right, and then I am now going to multiply with my 1, which is in the tenths place value of my second number. And I'm going to first add my 0 as my placeholder, because now that I've moved one number to the left, I need to add a 0. And I'll do 1 times 3, which is 3, 1 times 2, which is 2, and 1 times 1, which is 1. And then I will add my numbers. So I have 8, 6, 9, and 1. But now I need to place my decimal. So I'm going to go up top. Before we would do this first, but this time we're doing it at the end. And I'm going to figure out how many digits do I have behind my decimal in all of my numbers. So in this number, I just have this one digit, the 3, behind the decimal, or to the right of the decimal. So I just have one digit. In this number, I have the 6 and the 1 to the right of the decimal, so I have 2 digits. Then I'm going to add those two, and I'll have 3 digits behind the decimal. So I'll count 1, 2, 3, and my final answer is 1 and 968 thousandths. So that is our answer for the first problem. Okay, now the second problem is an addition of decimals problem. So when I add my decimals, when I add with decimals, I do line up the decimal. But this one's tricky because I see that the second number does not have a decimal because it's a whole number. I know that the decimal always goes to the right of a whole number because there is nothing behind the decimal, or there are zeros. Oops, I added too many decimals. Or there are zeros behind that decimal. So my whole number, the decimal goes to the right of it. Okay, so now that I have that, I'm going to just set up my addition problem. So I have my larger number, the number with more digits, on top. So I have 12 and 891 thousandths on top. And then I need to figure out where to put my 7. I see that the decimals need to be lined up, and because it's a whole number, the decimal goes to the right. So I'll have 7 and my decimal. And now my numbers are lined up. I fill in everything to the right of the decimal with zeros. And now I'm ready to add. So 1 plus 0, I'm going to keep my addition sign so I remember I'm adding. 1 plus 0 is 0, 9 plus 0 is 9, 8 plus 0 is 8. Bring down that decimal. 2 plus 7 is 9, and 1 plus nothing is just going to be 1. So my final answer is 19 and 891 thousandths. This third problem is really tricky because it's division, but it's division with decimals in the divisor, which we have not done since the beginning of the year. So pay really close attention as we do this one. All right, so that first number is my dividend. So the first number is going to go inside the box. So I have 7 and 68 hundredths inside the box. Then on the outside of the box, I have 2 tenths. All right. So because we have decimal in the divisor, and the divisor is this number right here, this number outside of the box. So 2 tenths is our divisor. So because we have that decimal in the divisor, oops, I erased my 2 as well. Because we have that decimal in the divisor, we need to, first thing we do before we do anything else is make that divisor into a whole number. To make the divisor into a whole number, if I have 2 tenths, I need to multiply it by 10. And as you've been learning with Mrs. Perez when you're doing percents, multiplying by 10 is the same thing as just moving that decimal over one place. So if I put the decimal to the right of the number, now my divisor is a whole number. So now I'm just dividing by 2, which is easy. But I can't just multiply my divisor by 10. I also have to multiply my dividend by 10. So I need to move that decimal to the right once in the dividend as well. And then final step is to bring that decimal up top. So now I have 76 and 8/10 divided by 2, which is much easier to do than dividing with a decimal in the divisor. And now I just divide normally. So 2 goes into 7 3 times. Multiply 3 times 2 is 6. Subtract and I get 1. Bring down my next number 6. 2 goes into 16 8 times. Make sure you're careful with where you're putting your numbers up top so that you have the decimal in the right place. 2 times 8 is 16. 16 minus 16 is 0. Bring down my next number, which is an 8. 2 goes into 8 4 times. That 4 goes behind the decimal. 2 times 4 is 8, and then I subtract, which is 0. And so my final answer is 38 and 4/10. And then the final problem that we have is subtraction. So this subtraction is like the addition problem, where I have one whole number and one number with a decimal. But I remember from the addition problem that if I have a whole number, I can just place that decimal right behind the whole number. And just like addition, with subtraction, we line up the decimals. So I'll have 14 with my decimal right behind it, and then I'll have 12.919. In the spaces up top where I have nothing filled in, I will just put zeros. And then I am subtracting. I always start on the right when I am subtracting, so I always start on this side. All right, so I look at that first number, and I see that I can't do 0 minus 9 because 0 is smaller than 9. So I have to go to the second number. I can't borrow from that 0 either. I can't borrow from the next 0. I have to go all the way to the 4 and borrow. So the 4 becomes a 3. My 0 becomes a 10. But now I have to borrow again, and it becomes a 9. My next 0 becomes a 10. Borrow again, and it becomes a 9. And my last 0 becomes a 10 as well. So now my problem is all set up for me to do my subtraction, and so this will be really easy from here on out. So now I have 10 minus 9, which is 1, 9 minus 1, which is 8, 9 minus 9, which is 0, keep my decimal in the same place, 3 minus 2, which is 1, and 1 minus 1, which is 0. So we can just get rid of that 0 since it's before any number. So my final answer is 1.081, or 1/81,000. All right, that's the last problem, so go ahead and do the rest on your own and let me know if you have any questions.